Hey guys, what's up? MadSeason here, back with another video for you. Path of Exile 2 is out, and as fun as it is, it doesn't really hold the player's hand too much. And while I actually like this, I wanted to share some tips and tricks that I've learned along the way that I can guarantee you will either make you more powerful or just improve your quality of life. So let's get into it. The first is to always salvage items with sockets. Early on in Act 1, when you get to the Ogham village area, Renly will send you to get his tools, and if you do, you unlock the salvage bench mechanic, where if you put items with sockets into here, you get the materials to add them to either your weapon or armor, depending on what you actually salvage. So even if they're white, pick it up and break it at the bench. Which leads us to the next one, and that's people are quickly learning that elemental resistances are very powerful. So if you hit a brick wall, put some sockets on your armor and then add an elemental rune to it to gain some extra resistance, or on your weapon for extra damage. Next is that you should also check the vendors in town for gear with sockets to buy. Start with the normal difficulty and the lower acts to get cheaper prices, as they give you the same amount of materials. You can also use the search function at the bottom to quickly filter it out, or enable always show sockets in the options to make them stand out more. And next is one that a lot of people miss, is to salvage quality items. This gives you materials that you can use to increase the quality of your own items, and it can be on anything. I can pretty much guarantee you that a lot of you, just like me, left so many whites on the ground without even checking them. So you want to mouse over every single one to see if they have added quality, and if they do, pick them up and salvage them. And next, similarly to socketed items, you can also buy these from vendors, and you can also use the search bar to filter them out quickly. And again, start with the lower difficulty and the earlier acts for cheaper items. Just go left to right on your main map here and go through each hideout. And if you're wondering, you can increase the quality of an item by 20%, which is quite a boost to your power level. Next is to just in general check the vendors. Oftentimes in RPG games, vendors exist mainly to dump your gear, and I think a lot of people are kind of wired to believe that now, but that's not true in Path of Exile 2, and many times they will sell you great gear at a relatively low price, so it's worth checking out whenever you're in town. And another tip is that they reset their stock every time you level. Next is to don't sell unidentified gear, because it sells for way less, especially when you unlock the hooded one in Act 1, who identifies all of your gear for free. And also, if you didn't know, you can just control left click him to skip the dialogue option. And if you do this on disenchant vendors, it'll bring up the disenchant screen. And for buy and sell vendors, you can use alt click. So you're welcome. Please like the video, by the way. And speaking of convenience, you can control click to sell items instead of arduously dragging them over to the inventory, and shift click split stacks. And to link an item in chat, it is Control-Alt-Click. You may have seen this one on the loading screen already, but portals disappear if the zone that they're connected to has been empty for around 10-ish minutes, so just keep that in mind when you head back to town to dump stuff. Also, if you're playing solo, you can just pause the game in the zone and it'll freeze everything. Most items in the game have some sort of a stat requirement. If you're short, you can circumvent this by temporarily equipping an item that has that stat, and then unequipping that temporary item. This saves money from respeccing your stat points all the time, but do note that this only works on items that give you the actual stat that you're missing. And if you do want to respec, you can change stat nodes just by clicking on them. Some people have been undoing entire trees thinking that they have to go back to that node, but nope, just click on it and you can switch it from there. And while we're on the skill tree, you can search for specific passives. For example, I'm on my witch here, and let's say I want to increase my minion damage and health, so I just search minion, and it highlights all of them. On your map, you'll notice all of these little icons for optional bosses and events. I recommend doing all of them, but definitely do the ones with the little plus symbols, because they give you permanent passive increases like more life, more resistances, skill points, and a bunch of other stuff. It's important to note that a lot of people miss the Sisters of Garukan in Act 2 Spars of Dashar, as it's just a white clicky. At this point, you're just sort of trained that it's just lore stuff, so a lot of people never click on it. But you want to click on this one because it gives you lightning resist, and it's also a bit harder to see on the map, I think, so I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of you missed this one. And also keep in mind that these give bonuses on both normal and cruel, so you want to do all of them twice. when cutting gems, the game doesn't really explain that you can use gems and skills outside of your class. For example, my witch, if I really wanted to, I could equip a crossbow and just pick up grenade so I could throw bombs with all of my skeleton homies. Now, is that smart? Probably not, but there are plenty of instances where it fits nicely into builds, and people understandably are under the impression that they're much more restricted than they actually are. Another tip is to go to the All Gems tab and search to give them a look. This also makes it much easier to find stuff if you're following a build or something. And you can also filter by stat, either dexterity, intellect, or strength if you want. People are also realizing that movement speed on boots is one of the most important stats in the game, as it helps you dodge many mechanics, so you definitely want to put a high priority on that as well, as you'll notice a big survivability increase, as well as just some handy speed. I think a lot of people forget about charms, so if you're stuck on a boss, you should switch your charm to their elemental type, even if it's just temporary. And next is, don't underestimate blue items. What you're looking for is a good affix, and you probably have a ton of orbs of augmentation just sitting in your bank, so make sure you use them. If you proc a second good affix, consider turning them into a rare to see if it's worth dropping exalteds, which for these you should be more conservative with because they're the main currency right now, but this is how a lot of people are building really good items. And similarly, orbs of transmutation turns whites into blues, and most people just stock them up and never use them, so use them because they're not doing much in your bank right now. Next is, if you're after a specific currency, Finn in Act 1 is like the in-game currency exchange. Here you can trade certain orbs for other orbs, so if you're after a specific kind, and you do have a big stockpile of ones that you don't need, you can trade them here. One of the currencies you should be after are the Jeweler's Orbs, as they give you more support sockets to your skills. A lesser orb takes you from 2 to 3, regular for 3 to 4, and then perfect for 4 to 5. The higher tier ones are very rare right now, so look carefully, and whatever you do, don't die if they drop. And on this note, a lot of people get confused about abilities tied to weapons. To increase the amount of support gems for these, you just need a higher level weapon. You can't use orbs on them. The graphics are amazing in this game, but sometimes I think it can get a little too hectic, especially if you're playing multiplayer, sometimes to the point where you have no idea where your character is and where the enemies are, but you can do some things to help with this. One is to enable health bars, either for allies or enemies or both, and you can also change the color and size of your mouse cursor if you keep losing track of it. If you're unclear on what certain stats and affixes do, you can hold the Alt key to get more information, and you can also pin an item on the top right to keep it on your screen to read it and keep the action going. Or if you want to make a World of Warcraft interface from 2005. The Reforge bench is really important, as it lets you combine 3 of the same items of the same rarity to re-roll them, so you can save the crappy ones, and every time you get 3, reforge them to get another shot. I think this is really underutilized. Next is, in your skill menu, you can click this tiny arrow to open up a menu to change an ability to attack without moving, which can be handy in some scenarios. But even more handy is to force an ability to a weapon set. You might find that using it with a different weapon set will cause it to deal extra damage. It'll automatically swap for you, so you don't have to manually do it. And this can be a game changer depending on your build. Like say you have a big damaging ability, so you want to use that with your big two-hander instead of maybe your sword and shield. And in the same vein, next is that the skill tree is tied to weapon sets. You can allocate points differently per weapon set, which may change your build. Like here, for example, one set you're using a big two-hander and the other is dual wielding. Obviously you want the two-hander to have the two-hander damage and your dual wielding to have one-handers, so this would be a good area to make use of these set-specific allocations. Next is the Gem Cutter's Prison increases the quality of skills, which a lot of people know, but what some don't know is that this persists through skill levels, meaning that if you were to use it at level 5 and then upgrade it to 6 later on, you still get that quality increase, so there's no need to stockpile them like some people have been doing. Let's say that you find an area that you want to farm. To reset it without reloading entirely, just control-click it on the map, or alternatively, you can go into your escape menu and then hit respawn at checkpoint. Multiplayer is really fun in this game, but not so much when people take your shit, so If you're playing with pugs or goblin friends, set your loot to permanent allocation so they can't gank it. And next we have some flask tips. These regen based off of kills, and many of the bosses in this game summon adds solely for this reason, to help the player regen health and mana. So if you're in a desperate situation and you're out of heals, just kite and kill the adds to refill it. You can also refill them by hitting checkpoints or using the well in town. And if you're really struggling with this, you can go for the affix that gives you charges per second and just wait it out. Your stash is very customizable. You can right-click tabs to set the name, color, or affinity, so when you're dumping off, it'll drop the items in the proper tab. And if you do decide to buy stash tabs from the cash shop, my personal recommendation is currency and gems, since you get so many of them. But you can buy them for a bunch of stuff like essences and flasks, for instance. And lastly, a lot of people run out of room on their action bar for abilities, but if you hold control, you get a whole new bar. But that's pretty much it. This is all stuff I would have killed to know when I first started the game. I would definitely be a lot more rich and further progressed, so I guess I just wanted to share it with everyone else in case maybe you're struggling. Hopefully these tips will make things a little bit easier on you, and if that is the case, please like the video and subscribe for more Path of Exile 2 content, because I'm really enjoying this game so far and I want to make a bunch of videos about it, so I'll definitely see you in the next one. Thanks guys.
Farewell for now, mortals. We hope you enjoyed today's video. See you again soon.